The time is 12 minutes to 8 o'clock. Financially, it's a bigger export than steel. It's produced more popular slogans than any of the political parties, and as such, such is its success that it's now known around the world as Britpop. Well, tomorrow the academic world is turning its attention towards the impact of the music and whether it'll stand the test of time. Leeds University is hosting the first symposium to compare Blur with Beethoven, and our reporter Paul Welsh is there. Morning, Paul.
Good morning. Yes, this is the music school at Leeds University, where they really do believe that Britpop is a subject worthy of serious discussion and debate. They're preparing to fill this hall with professors and lecturers from all over the country to discuss the phenomenon that's become known as Britpop. Suede, Oasis, Pulp and Blur have made it here and in America too. But some might say Britpop's had its day. The flavour of the month, the Spice Girls trumpeted the death of the Britpop movement at the Brit Awards in February. But others in the music industry say there's life in the guitar bands yet.
Sales are still pretty steady. For example, the Blur single's out this week, and that'll sell really strongly this week. Everybody's eagerly awaiting the Oasis album.
Liam and Patsy, they've tied the knot finally. 8:30 this morning they did the biz, that is it, man and wife. And here's Oasis.
I get the feeling from talking to people in the record industry that there is a desire for something new. I think we've come out of a long period of creative void almost. Certainly in the 80s pop music was very samey, it didn't really do very well abroad. Britpop was a kind of a re-emergence for British music, and it was very successful. It's captivated the imagination of the vast majority of the record-buying public.
Well, the organiser of the conference and a leading music journalist making a slightly more earlier appearance there than was scheduled. Steve, what is it how do you academically define Britpop?
Well, I think one of the first points to make about Britpop, one of the many ironies of Britpop, is that it's not actually that British a phenomenon as such. It's actually a very deeply English thing. I mean, I can sense this as a Scot, but I was also talking to one of my Welsh friends last night, having a rather vitriolic argument about Britpop, and this person absolutely loathes it. One of the few things that we can actually agree on was the fact that it is a deeply English thing, rather than British as such.
Paula, are we in danger of taking this all too very seriously? I mean, it's pop music, for goodness sake, isn't it? I mean, professors and lecturers all discussing it in great depth.
Well, we do spend around a third of our times listening to music, whether that's in a communal space or in isolation. So no, I think it's about high time we had a conference like this. It's going to be great.
Well, there is a lot of talk of Britpop being dead, isn't it?
Well, I think in some ways it is. You know, I mean, the last Brits Awards, for instance, with the Spice Girls, I think it was Jerry, when they were collecting one of the big awards, said, "Now we know that pop is back," which was a very direct reference to the kind of Blur year at the Brits and then the Oasis year. Now we seem to have moved away from that, and with the Spice Girls we're moving back towards, if you like, more American influences. Because I mean, one of the things about Britpop when it started out, of course, was the way in which it was in some ways a reaction against the kind of grunge scene in particular, but American music in general.
I mean, Paul, it's bad enough for you trying to keep up as a music journalist with all the changes in pop music and all the new styles that come out and all the new bands. How on earth do academics, do you think, possibly get across a subject like this that isn't, like the great composers of the past, dead and easy to study?
No, it isn't that easy to study, and that's one of the beauties of it, I suppose. It gets harder and harder, and I agree. I don't think in a way Britpop has just changed form, but I think, you know, it lives on in other places, and that's why you can have Cooler Shaker, the Spice Girls, the Eels, Symposium, Fantasy Wine, all in the same chart. So I just think it's changed form.
I mean, Steve, how do you compare with what people might call the stuffier professors who study the arias and the concertos?
Well, it presents some rather interesting problems actually, in terms of actually teaching this stuff, because one of the things, if you're, for instance, a Beethoven scholar as a lecturer, we all know what Beethoven's music is. It's kind of over and done with. It's been written to death about. Everyone who writes on it knows everyone else who writes on it. We know where all the scores are, where all the important manuscripts, etc., etc. But if a student comes up to you and asks you a question, if you're a Beethoven scholar, chances are you're going to be able to answer it extremely well. One of the things about popular music, it's such a transient thing in terms of style and genre and so forth, that it's very, very difficult to actually keep up with it. And I find continually that my students are exposing me to stuff that I've never heard before.
Okay, which ones should he be preparing to get into right before his students come and talk to him about it?
Symposium and Fountains of Wayne, definitely, but geography is really far too simple a category to divide music up into. It's a really complex form.
Exactly.
Well, we'll be sitting and chatting about this and listening to the music all the rest of the morning here. That's it from us for the moment. Handing now back to Helen Young in the studio for the weather in London.
Thank you very much, Paul, wherever you are.